Hey guys, Sally here. I'm the drone girl. As you can see today, I've got the new DJI Avata 2 drone. This thing launched in April 2024 as an upgrade to the original DJI Avata drone that launched back in 2022. I'm excited to show you what's inside because inside this box is not just the drone itself. With this comes big improvements to other aspects that go into FPV flying. I'm talking about a new pair of DJI Goggles 3 and the RC Motion 3 controller. So, some high-level notes on this drone and what makes it better on the new one before we dive into actually opening this thing. For starters, expect better image quality, and that's largely just due to a bigger sensor. Then we're also looking at longer flight time. This guy is capable of 23 minutes over 18 minutes on the original Avata. As you can see, I've got the 3-pack battery kit. You can also buy a cheaper version with just one battery. And then, of course, there's just that better overall FPV experience with the goggles and motion controller that I mentioned. This thing costs $999. So with that, let's go ahead and open this thing up. All right, I've got my cheese knife. Here we go. Now, I mentioned that this drone costs $999. That is actually less than what the Avata cost when it launched back in 2022. Of course, now the Avata is less than $999. It's been discounted. Why would you buy that over this one? So I'm usually seeing the original Avata for around $700. But it's pretty incredible to see that the Avata cost over $1,000 when it launched, and this drone is now under that $1,000 milestone. The wrapping is off. We got my sticker, and inside we've got the case, which you get when you purchase it as the Fly More combo. Here we go. So let's go ahead and see what is in store for us. Lots of beautiful clean packing. This is always my favorite part. Here we have the drone itself. This drone does weigh more than 249 grams, which means if you're flying outdoors in the US per FAA regulations, you are going to have to register. That's our drone. It is still pretty light. Then the other important stuff, here are our goggles, and then is our DJI Motion Controller 3. This one's a lot smaller than the original motion controller. Nice and ergonomic. The ergonomics experts love this. So basically the kit consists of these 3 things aside from a few accessories. Let's dive into them. While you can use a standard controller, DJI actually kind of recommends that you fly with this type of controller rather than the 2 joysticks. This makes it possible to really easily make your drone not just fly fast, but do tricks. That includes flipping, drifting, and rolling. This drone kind of gets us into the FPV freestyle. Press a single button, which just basically makes your drone flip or roll. It can go 360 degrees to the left and right. And then yes, if you get too crazy and the drone flips and lands on its back, then you can engage what's called turtle mode. So when activated, Avata 2 automatically flips back into its takeoff position from upside down. As far as the feeling of the controller itself, it's obvious this is a lot smaller and lighter than the original controller, which just makes it more comfortable to hold. Then there's also the tech that you can't see just by looking at this controller. This controller uses a wireless connection technology called GFSK Sidelink, which improves the signal stability. So in turn, you can just expect a better connection, reduced latency, which is all good, especially if you're trying to race. That's the controller. Let's talk about the goggles. This is another huge upgrade we've seen in the Avata. Now, when I reviewed the original Avata, the battery just dangled off and it was like really difficult to use. It was honestly really poorly designed. That is a non-issue with these goggles. We have adjustable adapters, we have binocular cameras, and then that can also be superimposed with the aircraft's live feed simultaneously. So what's up with this headband? We don't have the dangling battery anymore. Now we have an integrated headband and battery. It's really nice and comfortable. Actually, you can't really tell, but I'm feeling a forehead pad here, which alleviates a lot of facial pressure that a lot of people, including myself, criticized in the previous version. With this headband on. The goggles weigh 410 grams. I'm gonna be comfortable. I don't wanna just like wear this around all the time, but it doesn't feel too bad on my head. If I am sitting here for a half an hour, I feel like I could be completely comfortable flying. Speaking of flying for a half an hour, the batteries for the goggles at least last about 3 hours, which is super convenient because you won't have to recharge them too often. There's also another neat feature, the one-tap defogging function. After all, sometimes fog does build up. You just have some condensation in the lenses, especially if you're flying someplace really humid. So when you tap this single button, then internal fans actually briefly accelerate to their highest speed, which allows for some rapid air circulation and should clear out that fog basically right away. Another thing that's cool about the Goggles 3 is that you can watch a live feed with them via the DJI Fly app. So you can see what the goggles are seeing. Your friends can look through the Fly app, so you can transmit the goggles live feed to their device. That's just one device, but what if you want to air the live feed to multiple devices? Well, you can actually connect a second cable and select audience mode, and that makes it so you can share the live feed to a display. That's really compelling if you want to connect it into, like, let's say a big TV and air what you're seeing to everybody in the audience. Not only are these products really compelling, they're not unique to only the Avata 2. They are also already compatible with the DJI Air 3 and Mini 4 Pro drones. I have some info on my website about how to turn those drones into FPV drones, and now you can turn them into really good FPV drones. So let's actually talk about the drone itself. It's got a bigger sensor, it's more powerful in low light conditions is gonna be the biggest difference. As far as image quality, you're looking at 4K, 60 frames per second. There's also slow motion capabilities. That'll be 2.7K at 120 frames per second. This drone doesn't have a gimbal, so how do the images stay stable? Typically, a camera drone would have a 3-axis gimbal to keep the footage level, especially as the drone is rocking, which this one especially is going to do if we're flying it in a racing or acro style. Instead, what this drone has is a type of electronic image stabilization. There are 2 stabilization algorithms DJI has created to smooth out footage. Rock Steady eliminates overall picture shake, while Horizon Steady ensures that your footage basically remains locked on that spot in the horizon, even as the drone is swaying. If you do turn it off, there's a feature called gyro flow, which at least allows you to stabilize your footage post-production, which is something you might want to do. Now, speaking of camera, I do want to talk about ND filters. This is something people ask about a lot. These can help make your footage a little nicer, especially if you're flying in super bright lights like daylight, high noon. The ND filters are ND8, ND16, and ND32. They cost extra, about $80, so I wouldn't recommend buying these if you're mostly just flying indoors, but if you are flying outdoors, especially in bright sunny days, this is something worth having. But one of the biggest upgrades is improved transmission. Whereas the old Avata used OcuSync 3, this is now OcuSync 4. Before we could transmit over 10 kilometer distances, now we're looking at 13 kilometer distances. It's also just a more reliable transmission system with reduced latency, so that's really critical, especially for drone racing. And then there's some new safety features. For example, if you're using the RC Motion 3, you can simply press the lock button and then this drone will automatically return to home. That also kicks in if the drone's battery gets too low or if the drone loses signal. If you purchase the version of Avata that has the 3 batteries rather than just the 1, it costs about $200 more, but you get multiple batteries, and then you also have this charging hub where if, let's say, one battery is at 50% power and then you have the 2 other batteries are at 25% power, what you can actually do is you can elect to transfer the 25% power over to the 50% power batteries, and you effectively have 1 full battery. So here's where our battery connects in the back, and you can see how charged it is. We plug in our micro SD here on the side, but there's something really compelling about this is how many times have you flown and forgotten your micro SD card at home? Me. But what's interesting about this is that there's internal storage, 46 gigabytes of internal storage. That's up from the 20 gigabytes in the original. What is 46 gigabytes in practice? It's actually about 90 minutes of video. It's also really easy to transfer footage instantly to your smartphone, so that way you can get that footage up on TikTok or Instagram ASAP. This drone is available now. It starts at $999. The DJI Avata 2 is available now from all the major retailers, Amazon, Best Buy, B&H. I've put the links down below. If you are considering purchasing this drone, I would appreciate if if you use those links, as those companies support me as well. Let me know what you think. Is there something that you really like about it? Something that you wish was in the Avata 2 that hasn't actually shown up in this? Please leave a comment below. Happy flying.